Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
Brought to you by GlanviaConnect.com.
Hello and welcome to Farmview. Well, as usual, it's Kieran O'Connor here with your weekly farming programme. Once again, a very busy show for you this week. Well, on this week's programme, I'll discuss the impact of the new EU COVID Crisis Fund announced earlier this week, both on CAP and the Irish farming and agri sector. I'll have an update on how marts are coping with our new COVID regulations and indeed the success of their online options for both buyers and sellers. And plus a good news story with rural towns and villages in decline across the country. We had brilliant news recently for County Waterford with Cappoquin being granted 1.6 million from the Rural Regional Regeneration Fund. Fantastic news indeed. We'll find out what's the plan for this fund. And plus, as always, we'll have our farming calendar.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanviaConnect.com, Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
Well, in the early hours of last Tuesday morning, the Next Generation EU fund of 750 billion, of which 390 billion in grant aid, very necessary to really underpin the EU economic recovery, was announced. And to see the impact of what's involved from the farming and agri sector, I'm joined from the Irish Farmers Journal by their market specialist. Once again, we welcome back Phelim O'Neill. Phelim, welcome back to our programme.
Hello again, Kieran.
Phelim, we're talking big figures here, 750 billion, of which 390 billion are in grant aid. But from the farming perspective, and particularly the CAP, the next 7 years as regards the Common Agricultural Policy, how do you see it impacting on the farming and agri sector? Or have you been disappointed from as part of the European Green Deal, that the whole farming impact here?
Yes, Kieran, the numbers that we're talking about here are mind-boggling. We talk about this 1.8 trillion EU budget, the big part, of course, of which, and the bit that's completely new, is the 750 billion recovery fund from the COVID pandemic, or maybe the ongoing pandemic as opposed to recovery from it. That where Irish farmers have to focus in on is a 7-year budget called the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, or the budget for the next 7 years. Currently, we're working out of a 2014 to 2020 budget, and for the next 7 years, the Commission has earmarked just for all of their activities, the EU, that the budget for that will be just over €1 trillion, 1.074 trillion. An awful lot of money, but within that then the amount that will come to agriculture is in the region of about 336 billion through the Common Agriculture Policy. When that's all distilled down, and if we park all those numbers for the moment, what matters to Irish farmers, I suppose, the amount of money that will be going into their pocket through the schemes for the next 7 years. And in terms of what's coming to Ireland, it looks that we will be getting in or around 10.7 billion, which is just very fractionally ahead of what it was the last time round. And that means, in terms of the actual money that's there going into a farmer's bank account on the basis of a payment or a scheme payment, it'll look broadly similar. But there's a few things that have to be borne very much in mind here. First and foremost is the value of that money. There's no inflation element to it, so the fact that you're getting the same now that you were essentially getting back in 2005, and the cost of diesel, the cost of wages, everyone else's salary and income has gone up in the meantime. Farmers are essentially standing still there. But it's not just the standing still part for the same money, it's the getting that money. And if you think about the scheme that we're just currently in, the CAP that we're just currently in, you have this thing, the Pillar 1 and the Pillar 2 payment. The Pillar 1 is your direct payment, the BPS payment, and in the typical Irish farm, that has been accounting for...
Yes, bring it back to a typical farm.
14,000, that there is 10,000 of it's made up from that. The other 4,000 comes from the Pillar 2, which is the environmental, the greening part, if you like, this time round. Next time round, the Pillar 2 payment, it won't be a simple bolt-on like the greening was. It is a completely, totally separate application. It's getting more money than the Pillar 1s, and that's something that farmers are going to have to apply.
A minefield of specification, I'm sure, as well. A minefield of specification. As regards the whole farm to fork and biodiversity, the whole strategies within that, obviously the green influence and protecting the environment and climate change and all of that. Obviously, from a farmer's point of view, there's a lot expected of the farmers, and do you see this new REP scheme becoming part of that?
CAP itself remains to be finalised. They don't finalise it until they get the budget in place, and that now is the next job of work for the EU to get it finalised. And that's where we will get to see the detail of how the farm to fork strategy will work out. Again, remember that the policy at the EU level is that they will ask the national government to submit their national plan for approval, and within that national plan then the government can put in place something like if you like a new version of the REP scheme that we would have known from times gone by. There will be and in terms of the allocation of the money, there's slightly more has went into Pillar 2 for the next time than was in it the last time, been taken out of Pillar 1. 40% of the total cap expenditure next time round is expected to be on either environmental or climate schemes.
Okay.
So if the government can design a REPS type scheme, if you like, that would work for Irish farmers, then certainly and meet the climate and the environmental needs that Brussels have, then you can see how that might work. But it's not going to be as simple as just sign a line here or do something there. Farmers will be demanded to do more to basically compete for the same pot of money as they had before, with doing a little bit less.
The Rural Environment Protection Scheme, one of the best schemes we've ever had, and really there was a great buy-in by the farmers. Obviously, that is key, and ticking the boxes there is key for farmers is to avail of all this money that's coming down the track.
But the challenge will be the next time round when we do this national plan, is designing that REPS type scheme that works both for farmers and also meets the approval of Brussels, because remember, it's not at the discretion purely of the Dublin government to do that. It will have to get approval in Brussels. So I think that's where the skill is now needed, and the best minds in the country, if you like, in all agricultural and environmental matters, need to come together to put that in place, to design a scheme that will work for farmers and also get approval by the EU.
So Phelim, bottom line, as we mentioned at the top of the programme, 750 billion, the whole COVID crisis, will say fund for recovery fund, 750 billion, which included 390 billion in grant aid. From the farming and agri sector, overall, do you feel the farmers have done poorly here, or do you feel it's as good as it gets for farmers in light of the current scenario?
Maybe it's as good as it was going to be in the circumstance, but the reality of life is here, and my head's been spinning with the numbers over the past few days trying to make sense of this, and I'm sure many others are in the same boat. But the reality is, and I look at this in a longer term situation, if you go back, and we have a graph in the Farmers Journal this week just demonstrating it. If we go back to 1985, 73% of the EU budget went on the Common Agriculture Policy. As recent as 2005, it was 50%. And then if you look at the 2014 to 2020 period, it was between 37 and 40%. If you take the money that's allocated this time round and extend it out over the next 7 years, that is an average of 31%. The reality of life is that agriculture is slipping as a priority in the EU at a time when they're demanding more and more from farmers to get whatever payment they get. The EU obviously has other commitments. They have the issue of migration, they have the issues of defence, and that time frame that we're talking about there, they had to take in the countries from Eastern Europe and all of that, and we have lost the UK. But the reality of life is, the bottom line is, less is going towards agriculture of the overall budget, more is being demanded from farmers to get that money.
Phelim, I think you summed it up all very well. As a very complicated, I know in this week's journal you have very extensive coverage on this week's journal, really a lot of figures out there, but as you say, farmers will have to do a lot more, particularly from the environment and indeed a greening point of view, to secure the funding coming from the EU. Phelim O'Neill, market specialist from the Irish Farmers Journal. Thanks for talking to us, Phelim. I'm sure we'll be talking to you in the near future, and of course we didn't even touch on Brexit, which of course is also a contingency plan there, which is also going to have a big implication as well. Phelim, thanks for taking our call as always.
Thank you, Kieran.
Well, over the past few months, obviously, it's been very difficult for all sectors of the industry. One area in particular is, of course, our livestock marts, and we've discussed how during their closure and how with the reopening and how they've developed. And indeed, we spoke to Sean O'Sullivan several times over the last few months. But thankfully, they're back up and running again, albeit slightly different than what we had. But more importantly, there's now an online version where guys have a chance to go online at livestocklive.com. So for an update to see how things are actually going on the ground, CEO of Cork Marts, that's Sean O'Sullivan. Sean, welcome back to our programme.
Thank you, Kieran.
Sean, as I said in the intro, I spoke to you one day. It was very depressing with the whole thing literally closing down. We slowly came back. But the last time I spoke, you were more upbeat a few weeks ago with this whole area of online and how well farmers had adapted to this new drop-and-go system as well.
Yes, Kieran, I suppose, look, we've seen more change probably in the last 3 or 4 months in our business than we had in the previous 10 years, with the advent mainly of online selling. And as I had mentioned to you previously when we last spoke, look, it was still relatively new, but it had been, I suppose, well received, and I think it continues to be well received and embraced by not just buyers now, but I think sellers are very much getting into it as well, because they see the benefits of being able to sell remotely. Obviously buyers can buy remotely, but sellers can sell remotely, and I suppose that has often been, a complaint, for want of a better term, that we have heard over the years, that, sellers coming to the market takes a bit of time and they're hanging around waiting to sell, etc. Look, the online app platform has presented them now with a great opportunity to make the best use of their time. We're still operating a drop-and-go system for for livestock. So the farmer or the farmer's haulier brings in the stock. 9 times out of 10, our own staff can handle them and put them through the race and read them and mark them, etc.
So the farmer stays in his vehicle most of the time, and the
farmer
staff
stays in his vehicle most of the time. And I think, look, in fairness, most people are fully understanding and will observe that. I know, in time people can get a little bit careless and relaxed, but look, we try and keep the pressure on and ensure that we're operating and all our staff are operating under the strict protocols that we have agreed with the Department of Agriculture. A side benefit to us of this, Kieran, is there are less people, just staff mainly now in mart yards and mart lairages. Cattle are being moved in and out of the ring and being pinned, etc., and repenned, and that has had the added benefit of a much safer work environment for both staff and anyone, the people who are not there.
From a health and safety perspective,
it's a great benefit.
Yeah, and obviously COVID protocols are obviously across the whole system there, be it in Dungarvan, Fermoy, or indeed Care down here in this region. As regards, you mentioned about sellers, but obviously buyers as well. How well have buyers adapted to the online? What type of percentage are you getting, and what type of feedback are you getting from a buyer? And indeed, you said how positive the seller section has been. Side of it, how well has the buyers gone?
Look, the buyers have operated well. Now, prior to we being allowed back into the sales ring with buyers, obviously it was 100% online. Since the 8th of June, we were allowed back into sales rings under strict protocols with limited numbers of buyers. And what we have noticed is, even among that limited number of buyers physically in the ring, there would be a few of them that would use their phone to bid on the animals. And of course, we have buyers who aren't present at the mart who will use their phone or their laptop to bid on animals. We're looking at roughly probably about 20% of lots are sold online, and look, we would see that growing in the months ahead.
Well, speaking to Richie Kerwin there recently, who's mart manager down in Ross, he made the point that also you can get buyers who are not necessarily from your catchment area, so it has broadened the base of buyers, so he felt that was a positive as well from the online at livestocklive.com.
Oh, it is, yeah. Look, that is one of the benefits. Richie is correct in that. I suppose another benefit I have seen is, look, there are certain personality types that maybe the ring side doesn't suit them, and their nature may not lend itself to being in the hustle and bustle of a sales ring. Okay. And those buyers, and I've met a few of them of the past month or 6 weeks, they're very happy to come in the morning, look at the stock that they're interested in, and they can, in their own time, in their own way, they can bid and indeed buy those lots online without anyone knowing their business, and that suits a certain type of person, and it's great that they can be accommodated in this new COVID world as well,
Well, Sean, to you and all involved in our livestock mart, you've done a great job through a very difficult period. I'm delighted to hear that the online at livestocklive.com is working so well indeed. Well done to all involved, buyers, sellers, farmers, indeed all your staff at all your marts right across the region, particularly down here with Dungarvan on Monday, for my Tuesday, and of course Care on Wednesday. Sean O'Sullivan, CEO of Cork Marts, as always. Sean, thanks for taking our call. Best of luck going forward, and well done on a job. Well done to you and all your staff.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Thank you.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.
And you're welcome back to part 2 of Farmview. Now, before I talk to Dennis McCarthy about the great news of Cappoquin being granted €1.6 million in funding, let's have a look at some items from our farming calendar. First of all, turning to our local markets, and indeed great success locally with the markets across the city and county, with a fantastic selection available of locally produced artisan food every day from our markets. This Saturday and every Saturday morning we've Waterford Farmers Market in John Roberts Square, as well as Stradley Farmers Market, now trading outdoors every Saturday morning. On Sunday, this is more Farmers Market, Castle Avenue Lismore, running every Sunday from 10 until 4 in the afternoon. And on Thursday, of course, it's Thursday mornings, Dungarvan Farmers Market every Thursday morning in Grattan Square from 9 until 2. While on Friday mornings, we've Dungarvan Country Markets at the Causeway Tennis Club on Abbyside, running from 9 till 1:30 every Friday morning. And also, of course, on Friday mornings in the city, we've Waterford Country Markets in St. Olave's Hall. Now, as we mentioned in part 1, the marts are back up and running, indeed very busy at the moment this Saturday and every Saturday morning. We've cattle and calves at Waterford Ross Mart in New Ross from 10 o'clock, while on Monday mornings is Dungarvan Mart every Monday morning, cattle and calf sales running from 11 every Monday morning. And remember, all mart sales are now online at livestocklive.com, with bids taken from both ringside and indeed online. And finally, to our show jumping front, great activity across the city and county every week. The Shanakill House Equestrian Centre Kilmac Horse and Pony Leagues continue, with pony leagues every Friday from 5, while horse leagues every Wednesday also from 5. While in West Waterford, Gemma Phelan's Beachfield Equestrian Centre in Kappa, well, her horse and pony leagues also continue every Saturday morning from 10 and Thursday evenings from 5.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
with GlanbiaConnect.com, Ireland's biggest online farming shop and more.
But some great news recently for County Waterford with the news that Cappoquin had received 1.6 million in the Rural Regional Regeneration Fund. Fantastic achievement for the West Waterford town and a time when lots of towns are struggling to literally stay vibrant and stay alive. But great news for Cappoquin. And earlier in the week I got a chance to drop down to Cappoquin and speak to Secretary of the Cappoquin Community Development Committee, of course, who coordinate this whole area, and that's Dennis McCarthy. Dennis, what a fantastic achievement when you got news, 1.6 million.
Yeah, it was a great news for us, Kieran. We're delighted to have get this monies, and there has been several years of work going into this and to prepare for it, and we've been assisted very much by Waterford City and County Council in it. Now the money is allocated to Waterford City and County Council, and in conjunction with the Cappoquin Community Development Company and its sister company, Cappoquin Regeneration Company, we're going to bring forward plans over the next 18 months to 2 years to apply for further funding for the construction of projects.
It's a lot of money, and I know the Cappoquin Community Development Committee, you've had huge success, but how was Cappoquin selected?
Well, Cappoquin was selected, I suppose, by looking back at the history of the achievement of the Cappoquin Community Development Company over the years. I mean, I suppose one of our greatest achievements is the construction of the Cappoquin Community Centre back in the year 2005. That's cost us 3.2 million, and that's paid for almost to date. There's an outstanding debt of something like 60,000 on it. In addition to that, we have industrial units in the IDA Industrial Estate out in Carrigain, and we have 6 entrepreneurs working in there, including Blackwater Distillery. So from those achievements, we identified in Cappoquin that there was a need to look at the dereliction of the town and look at the economy of the town in general. So we carried out surveys back in 2014 and repeated the surveys in 2019 to identify what the level of dereliction was. The level of dereliction is over 20%, which is quite significant. So we met with Waterford County Council on a number of occasions, and we met with Waterford Leader Partnership. As a result of that, Cappoquin was nominated and identified by the government as one of the towns that needed assistance. So back in 2018, Cappoquin was selected by government as one of 6 pilot towns in Ireland to look at ways and means of attracting people to live back in the town. So in conjunction with Waterford City and County Council, plans were produced and submitted to government earlier this year. Those plans have been included in the 1.6 million as part of the 1.6 million. But the 1.6 million includes an awful lot more. There are 5 strands to it, and I just outlined the 5 strands in it. Number 1 is the acquisition and purchase of derelict buildings around the town centre and have those brought to a stage where they're shovel ready to develop. The second strand is the acquisition of properties based on the pilot scheme which I mentioned earlier to attract residential people or people to live back in attractive residential properties in the town. Those buildings will be purchased and developed to a stage where they're very energy efficient and suitable for family and business living. Strand 3 is what we call public realm, and that basically will be a redesign of the square in the centre of the town, including the footpaths and streets adjoining it. Strand 4 then relates to improving the access to the river. We see the river as being central to the development of Cappoquin and central to the economy of the town.
The
amenity of the town, amenity and economy. So the two will dovetail together. So by improving the access, we'll get greater use of the river and make it more attractive for people to come and use that amenity and live in the town. The final strand then is one which is quite exciting. It's hopefully the nomination of Cappoquin as a recreational hub for West Waterford, and in that it's looking at the development of a blue way on the river to correspond with the Greenway in Dungarvan. It's also looking at creating a riverside walk which would use the old railway bridge as a looped walk back into the town, out from the town and back into it, and the development of a 2-hectare biodiversity park. And there are 2 further assessments to be made. One is an assessment of the possibility of extending the Glenchlan River Walk to Cappoquin town itself, and then the feasibility of extending the Waterford Greenway to West Waterford. So there's quite a lot in that. And
very exciting. A lot of we'll say people might say on the outside. But in the short term, is this money over a 5-year period, a 10-year period? But how soon can you see, literally, as you say, shovel ready and actually taking place for Cappoquin?
Well, there's no time limit specified for the use of the money, but we intend, in conjunction with Waterford City and Council, to have these projects brought to a stage of shovel readiness within the next 18 months.
Okay.
So we are sitting down with Waterford County Council, developing programmes. We'll have to appoint consultants in various areas. So we have a target of 18 months to bring this to a stage where we can apply for further funding for the construction of whatever comes out of the proposals.
And is the bottom line of this is to bring vibrancy back to Cappoquin, because as a Cappoquin native, I grew up when you had the bacon factory, you had Cappoquin chickens, you even back to the railway station, you had pubs, you had shops, you had vibrancy. Cappoquin really needs it, and probably reflects what's happening across the country. But is it more getting people to live in the town, or is it bring activity to the town, or is it a bit of both and a bit of industry as well?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I mean, we need to develop the town to a stage where it's attractive for people to come and visit and also to come and live. So there's a bit of both in that, and it's with people coming and living and people visiting, that will improve the vibrancy and the economy of the town. I mean, if you take one of the buildings in the town, which is the Blackwater House, which people will know pretty well, we have that brought to a stage now where it's ready to develop into what we call a smart office.
And you've purchased that?
We've purchased that and brought to a stage where it's ready to be converted into a smart office, which is basically remote working. Remote working is very popular now amongst companies, amongst individuals.
Particularly after COVID, it's become very much popular, yes.
So there's an opportunity then here to create that and have it for that purpose.
You mentioned there part of the amenity across Cappoquin, you're on the bend of the Blackwater, the picturesque Blackwater. Delighted to see the rowing club doing so well, and the tradition there is over at one of the oldest rowing clubs in the country. That's really an untapped resource for the area, and as you mentioned Glenchalan as well, but the River Blackwater.
Yeah, the River Blackwater is very much untapped, and that's why we want to create easier access to the river itself and then develop the river as an amenity. If we can get to the stage of creating a blueway, I think it would complement significantly the greenway in Dungarvan, and that would extend the uses of the river for people to access and use and have an enjoyable amenity. I mean, at the end of the day, what we'd like to see is Cappoquin being a place that people like to come to visit, to come to enjoy the amenities, and to come and live in the town. And all those would bring back the vibrancy and the economy of the town. I mean, it certainly needs it at this stage.
And is this the first tranche? You say 1.6 million sounds a lot of money, but when you start purchasing buildings and renovating buildings, obviously wouldn't be long eating into it. But is this the first step of a bigger project, or will everything have to come from this initial money?
This is the first step, Kieran, of the project. I mean, it's creating designs, creating proposals. Once these proposals are brought to a stage where we have tenders in place to develop them, then we'll apply for Category 1 funding under the same scheme, under the RRDF scheme as well, in conjunction with Waterford City and County Council.
So once you get over step 1, there is more funding there?
There is more funding available, and that has been the trend in the past, where towns have got its initial funding and got their projects ready. They have got the Category 1 funding subsequently for that. Now, as you said, it's expensive work. Refurbishment of derelict buildings is very, very expensive, but they need to be done to create a vibrancy and create amenities in the town.
Well, Dennis, to you and all involved in the Cappoquin Community Development Committee, first and indeed to the Waterford County Council to see the opportunity. It's a huge funding, as you say, it's the first funding. It's a very positive project, not only for Cappoquin, but shows you what can be done. And obviously the community rowing in behind you, and you say with your committee here in the Cappoquin Community Development Committee, but there's a real vibrancy and excitement about this project.
There is, yeah. People are very much interested in it. And running in parallel with this at the moment is Waterford City and Council got €100,000 funding for town and village renewal. At the moment they're asking people to submit proposals for painting of their premises in the main streets, and they're proposing to give grants of 100% for residential. That's an additional one for residential properties, for residential, and 50% for
and you
commercial.
Get an uptake on that from the locals?
There's a significant uptake for that for the locals. So people in town are very excited by this and have bought into it. I mean, we've got significant help, I suppose, Kieran, from a number of groups, particularly Waterford City and County Council and the county elected members who have identified Cappoquin as in the need for this. We've also, I suppose, received assistance from Waterford Leader Partnership. We've received assistance from the Tomar Trust. And indeed, Senator Paddy Coffey, who is now retired, has been a great assistance to us, gave us the opportunity in 2019 to present our proposals to a Dáil committee on rural and community affairs. And I think that was very significant in us being identified and given this current amount of funding.
Well, Dennis, first of all, being selected Cappoquin, as I think at one stage of the 1 to 6 in the pilot, you're the only one actually in Munster, with 1.6 million in this rural regional regeneration fund. Bit of a mouthful there, but listen, to you and all involved, the best of luck, and hopefully I'll be back in a year or so to have an update on how things are going.
Thanks very much, Kieran, and hopefully we'll be back and see the fruits of the expenditure and see new proposals in the town. Yeah.
Thanks a million, Dennis.
Thanks, Kieran.
And before we go on our racing front, we had a good week again weekend for local connections. Last weekend at a very successful day's racing in Tramore, we had 2 local winners, with Kappa trainer Declan Queally saddling the opening winner and Dungarvan trainer John Kiley taking the next race for well-known Dungarvan owner breeders, the Flynn family of the Park Hotel, while Knockeen and Butlerstown trainer Henry de Bramid saddled winners at Tipperary and Roscommon. Good week all round. Well, that's my lot for this week's programme. So from myself, Kieran O'Connor, it's goodbye for now. Once again, my thanks to Sean and Ollie for all their help in putting this week's programme together. Stay safe, and hopefully I'll have your company again same time next week.
Farmview with Kieran O'Connor on WLR.
With GlanbiaConnect.com. Thousands of products in the palm of your hand.